Good evening, one and all. Welcome another Sunday at the round table where we talk about Jamaica, discuss what's happening in Jamaica, and we engage different folks as to their ideas and views on what is happening in Jamaica. Brethren, since we last gathered, there have been quite a number of items in the news, and I circulate something to you earlier in the week, but I am really concerned with the news about this $1 trillion that is unaccounted for. There are other things I'm concerned with, but before we get to that, I just want to shout out the many fans we have. I want to speak up Sister Karia Ebang, brother. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, this, but JP, I see you. Yes, with us. Gloria Morris, you're with us. Douglas, you're with us. And the list continue to grow. And I know right now we sign on, we are what? 34 listeners, and we just starting. So this Sunday, I want to invite the listeners to take part in the discussion because I think wholeness and this GLP government is serious about remaining in office. Okay, they are very serious about that, and you can't blame them. You know, they want to make money and they want to continue to make money, so them serious. But before that, before we tackle that issue, this $1 trillion, you saw the news, right? You guys were you
Yeah,
able
man.
to read the article?
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your impression? What do you make of this? Is this something stink with corruption, or what's really going on? Because my understanding is that at the ministry, the permanent secretary is the one who submit those reports, right? And the auditor general is saying that she has not received any reports for 9 years as to how the government spent the money that was allocated. What's your impression? Is this corruption or inefficiency?
It is both. It is both because you have a lot of corrupt permanent secretaries, just like how you have a lot of corrupt ministers. But I believe some of it has to do with negligence as some of the permanent secretaries. And another thing that we have to recognize is that some of these permanent secretaries want to do their work, but depending on the weight that these permanent secretaries carry, depending on their status, sometimes it's difficult to carry out that work because it also depends on the status of some of the ministers. Because some of these ministers think that them are heavyweight, right? And being some heavyweight minister, who, which permanent secretary are going to have the rudeness or the gall, to hold some of these ministers to account. Because as we have seen over the years, especially in the JLP government, some of these ministers talk as if not even Andrew Holness can talk to them, much less. And they have gotten away with so much things in public view in which the Andrew Holness has not even commented on what they have done. So it's a difficult, some of the things that the permanent secretaries might want to do, some of them just can't do it because they don't have the weight for push around, against, to push back against some of these ministers. I think though that, and one of the things that we must notice, this is not a thing about only about this particular GLP government, because if you notice in the report, this goes back, the report that this Auditor General is giving, it goes back beyond the GLP administration, from the PNP administration, because it goes back to about 2011, 2013, that period, right? So the kind of things we are talking about is not just about the GLP government, it's about the political system on a whole and how accountability is achieved in these ministries. I think that it has been long known that some of these permanent secretaries not doing them job. Some of these permanent secretaries cannot do them job effectively because it's like some of them it's like giving them basket for carry water. You have ministers who feel like say all the permanent secretary needs to do is to carry out whatever functions the minister give them to do. And that's the job of the permanent secretary. You have permanent secretary who cannot who don't feel like them can push back against that kind of attitude from ministers, right? So it's a mixed bag of things that is causing this breakdown, But what is clear, the whole structure of governance in terms of financial activities inside of the ministries, it's not working, right? It's just not working.
John, you were saying something.
No, I was going to just read for the purpose of the guests who may not necessarily be familiar with the article,
Yeah.
make reference to some of it.
Yeah.
So the headline is $1 trillion Accountability Crisis. $1 trillion. The ministries involved is the Ministry of Education and Youth, the Health Ministry coming out of COVID, the Office of the Prime Minister, among violators, not the only ones, of fiscal laws, failure to submit accounts, prevent scrutiny of public spending. The people's money is not accountable, meaning the taxes that Jamaicans pay. And even though we in the diaspora may not be paying taxes to Jamaica, many of us visit, have business there, have interest there, and would therefore have an interest in having an immediate interest. The language of this article, let me see if I just lost it a while ago, just a minute. It speaks about chronic non-compliance of some ministries and public bodies to fiscal regulatory requirements is hindering the independent assessment of how more than $1.6 trillion is allocated to these entities, how it was utilized, raising concern about transparency, accountability, and whether taxpayers receive value for the allocated funds. So these are the ministries that were mentioned. She also pointed out, Auditor General, that the years involved is 2012 to 13, to 2018 and 19, 2021 to 22, 2022 to 23. So, this is a huge amount of money that we are referring to over an extended period, not just the impact of the JLP government. And my concern is one of the big reasons why I strongly advocate for the People's Manifesto, a document, is that we have a section in there called transparency and corruption, which is, if completed, or when it's completed, I shouldn't say if, when it's completed, would list the things that people, ordinary working people, should be demanding that is effective in Jamaica. And also legal reform, that where a minister fails to comply with these provisions, you cannot just take them to court, but you can take them out of office. It has to have teeth. Otherwise, crime, corruption, which has been a long-standing problem in Jamaica, will remain a long-standing problem. So transparency, integrity, these are nice words, and everybody swear by them. But when it comes to actual practice, we in this document called the People's Manifesto need to put down, the brothers and sisters who are more familiar with these issues. Rattigan, for example, is more familiar than me. We need to agree on this area so that people can agree, disagree, contribute to how to improve this issue.
Patrick?
Yeah. I just want not to repeat anything that Lassar John said, but I think they both, touch on some points there. But I wanna say something further to that, right? In reading this article, is that this article is not just talking about accountability, but it is actually showing up something much bigger, right? Last mention about, of course, the corruption, right, and the shortcomings, you know. Um, what it brings to mind is when we hear, for example, the prime minister try to make a case for increased wages, right, and talk about qualifications, right, to run for office and all of that stuff. What we heard what he said, but I would go further to say that how much of us really understood what he's saying? Because in essence, what he's saying is that the job was not getting done because of incompetence, right? Because people were unqualified to do the job, right? And also, it was not getting done because people felt that they were being underpaid. So I guess that speaks to the whole matter of corruption as well. You know, so when last mentioned the point in terms of how it is both. I mean, he was right on point with that because a lot to the ordinary Jamaican, they have no clue how the government operates. So even in terms of accountability, they don't know what they would be required to be accountable for, right? Or what will accountability look like? So the real problem here is that this government, well, not just this government, but over the years, right? I've seen based on what I've heard and based on what I understand and everything in terms of the overall Jamaican situation, is that it is a situation that has been growing worse in terms of not just simple accountability, right, and transparency, but in terms of responsibility. There's absolutely no responsibility being taken for anything, right? And that's really saying that corruption is at the heart of it, right? Corruption is at the heart of it. It means that, what about the Auditor General? What about, all these different instruments of government that is supposed to be the ones keeping the books, keeping the accountability? What about the role of the permanent secretary in the ministry, for example, who is the chief, is like the chief officer, the chief executive officer. The minister is only the political overseer, you might call it. It's not his ministry. He's there to oversee the implementation of their political, program, whatever that may be. So when we're looking at corruption that affects money with the ministry, right? The main person who needs to be called to account to that would be the permanent secretary, right? And then the other thing is that when we look at the other areas of government in terms of Auditor General, in terms of, the Statistical Institute, all of these, which are supposed to be getting their regular reports in, right? So that if we need to make inquiries, there's somewhere to go, right? And some place for us to get it, right? Are you good that will join the show, because he was speaking to that to some degree on the show yesterday, in terms of accountability, right? And transparency. Without that, you cannot have an efficient government. And it only means that corruption is going on, and it can only get worse. So what we keep seeing is actually a worsening of the situation, right? So we can't just keep discussing, the situation getting worse. We have to look at where it really should be. We have to really look at in terms of are the necessary mechanism in place for proper accountability? Is the proper mechanism in place, right, for transparency, right? And then the whole matter in terms of being brought to account. Because what we cannot forget is that these same culprits are the ones who make the laws. They're the ones who make the laws in Parliament. That is why it is so important for us to understand, have a full understanding of how the government works, right? So that we can dissect it and look at it carefully and see where the people fall in all of this. So this article is really just telling us what we already know.
That's right.
Will, I want to welcome to the discussion, Bridget. Welcome to the platform.
Roving troublemaker, man. Roving troublemaker.
Yeah, we're talking about the $1 trillion. This news article about the $1 trillion that is unaccounted for. You saw that article, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your take on it? What's your take on the situation?
Look, that information has been there for a while. Anybody who had the time to scour the Auditor General's website would have seen that. It's just one of those things where the Jamaican press is just not playing the role of a traditional press. We don't have too many investigative reporters in Jamaica. In fact, I can only think of one because about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was told that if you look at just two websites in Jamaica, you'll have content for a long time to come. First one is the Integrity Commission, and the second one is the Auditor General. And I didn't believe it until I started looking at it. So some of the things that you're seeing, this article is a compilation of the reports that have been put out on the website. People just haven't been following, but it's there, and it's no secret. I mean, if it's a secret, it's a public secret. Everybody knows that. These people are just, and when I say these people, I'm talking about politicians in general of both stripes. They've been stealing for a long, long time. And it's only now, with the advent of, or the explosion of social media in Jamaica, that people are actually bringing this to light and paying attention. Because years before, you would never hear about these things, but they happened, and you'd have an investigation, but then it would just be stored under the rug, and then that's it. So I'm not surprised, and it's something that some of the things, actually, I have copies of them here at home, because I went to the website and I saw, especially the one about Ministry of Health and Wellness. So, the question is, what are we going to do? Are we just going to talk and rehash it, or are we going to take some kind of action to
Well,
have the government?
It's
well,
it's
let me say something. It is the action is very
I thought
limited.
Rattigan was going to make a recommendation on action. Or you cut him off.
All right, Ratigan, go on,
I,
Ratigan.
I don't want you to blow up Radigan as him just coming up, Reggie.
No,
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 no.
no. But I want to hear what his ideas are in terms of steps to address this.
There are quite a few steps.
Right.
The One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation, as I've mentioned on this program and several other programs, we have 5 ways that we're looking to address these government ills. One is through lawsuits, where you can file a mandamus writ, which is you're asking the court to compel the government to do what it's supposed to do. You can file a judicial review, where you can actually hold people accountable, or you can file an administrative declaration, where you can have the court not punish them, but just say, look, the judiciary recognizes that these things were supposed to be done and they weren't done. That's the legal part of it. Then you have the public relations part, where you make the announcements and you inform and educate the public, because I find that to a large degree we don't have an informed and educated public in Jamaica. And part of that is because there's nobody doing that, and people are not going to take it upon themselves to go out and look for the information, read, understand, digest, and share. The third is you do background investigations on some of these perpetrators, where you find out where, you start looking at their wire transfers, you start looking at their travel, you start looking at their communications, and thereby you can find out where some of this money is. And in fact, we know where some of this money is already. The fourth is protests, which we just did last week or the week before. Yeah, no, not this past Friday, the Friday before, where you bring it to the attention of a wider public, now an international public. The government doesn't like that. If you want to demonstrate in Jamaica, first of all, I'm not even sure if they'll grant you a permit, and if they grant you a permit, I'm not even sure what the parameters will be. But overseas, it's different. They don't want that. That they're deathly afraid of that. And the last thing, number 5, is the one that I think that they're most scared about. And that is you approach the donor agencies, donor organizations, donor countries, and you say to them, look, you need to have a proper accounting of the monies that you're sending for vulnerable, particularly for vulnerable communities in Jamaica, because the monies are not getting there. The rule of thumb is that for every dollar, 20 cents should go for administrative cost and 80 cents for the program. In Jamaica, it's the opposite. 80% goes into somebody's pocket and 20% for the program. They're very, very afraid of that. And the time is ripe for us to do that because they just declared, well, they said they declared it before, but now they're reiterating their support of the one China policy. That is going to cause a lot of problems. The American government at this point will do just about anything to deal with that. And if you notice, right after the prime minister and the minister of foreign affairs and foreign trade came out in support of the one China policy, what happened? The travel advisory. And the travel advisory is probably the worst we've ever seen because it basically says, do not go to Jamaica. And if you do, be prepared to get shot, raped, stabbed, and probably die because there are no medical facilities there to take care of you. It's the worst I've ever seen. If you look at it, it says for the parish of Clarendon, it says just drive through, don't stop, stay on the highway. And then for Kingston, it's just all over. It's when you look at and by the way, it says that in the very first, I think it's the last sentence of the first paragraph, it says that if you go to a all-inclusive resort, don't think you're immune from crime. That's getting into the heart of the tourist business, the tourism, right? So those are the 5 things. And like I said, the stars are aligned right now, and we are ready to move. We're moving with the stars. And the next protest is scheduled for May 10th in New York City. And it's going to be a doozy. And if the CG is watching, the Consulate General, I have 2 names for her because she's worried about this already. I've heard she's worried. 2 names for her: Bryant Square Park, Cyberlock. Bryant Square Park, Cyberlock. CG, you know what I'm talking about. And you probably should resign. You don't want me talking about those 2. Thank you, sir.
I want to know what that means.
Can I say something here? I know this is a time where it's very easy for us to cry corruption, corruption, corruption. I'm not saying that that is not part of the issue here with regards to the $1 trillion. But I'm gonna share with you an experience. I and some
Before you do that, Nita, the screen, it only can see you. Is it because you are talking or what? Okay, now we get back to the normal. Okay, because one of the listeners point this out. It's okay now.
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
In 2005, Anthony Hilton, the MP, well, he was coming just about to come into office, invited myself and another individual to come down and do an assessment of the technology needs of the schools serving West St. Andrew. And to do that, we have to look at the records and all of that stuff, the school records, to figure out the students, population, and all of that stuff. And to my surprise, when I went to Balmaji school and they carried me to a new wing that they construct at Balmaji Primary, and when they open it, all the records were paper, no electronic, nothing. Everything was paper and just put down on the floor in this office. I say this to say, could that be part of the issue in terms of the state need for reform and to become more modernized? And the lack of that modernization, that reform, is what is feeding this sort of behavior. Because I tell you, a lot of the offices in Jamaica still continue to keep paper records and what have you. Could it be inefficiency and not so much corruption?
I don't think that's a problem in the ministries. They have been through this modernization program that lasted over about nearly 10 years. It's a long time they were going through this modernization program in the public sector to upgrade their resources in terms of record keeping and all that stuff. I think the what we have seen over the years is that it is recognized that there's lack of accountability, lack of transparency, there's corruption, there's negligence, there's a lot of stuff going on in these ministries that is preventing real accountability and reporting on exactly what is happening. But what it has also shown is that no steps has been taken through PNP administration, through GLP administration, to set up the necessary structures inside of these ministries, right? Because it is one thing to talk about transparency. It is one thing to talk about accountability. But if you don't have the structures in place to make the transparency happen and to make the accountability happen, it just won't work. And they have not improved the structures for accountability and transparency in government. Despite all the reforms, despite all the technology, resources, and upgrading, they have the structures in these ministries, the structures in government have remained the same. What it is showing is that these people, these politicians, they are comfortable with the structures as it exists because these structures allow them to get away with, with all the corruption that they can get away with. I
Based
was
on
reading I was reading an article, I think it was from last year, where one permanent secretary was saying to the other members of the permanent secretary bodies that they should not just sign documents, right? They should scrutinize and they should ask questions because part of the structure in these ministries, we believe the permanent secretaries are the people who are most likely to be pulled up, right, and scrutinized when things go wrong inside the ministries. But some of the time, these permanent secretaries, they feel, based on the culture in these ministries, based on the culture of these politicians, that if the politician, if this big wig politician with all him clout, this big wig politician who think him of all this clout, propose and send something for him to sign, all he needs to do is sign. That permanent secretary was asking other permanent secretaries not to do that, not to fall prey to the pressures from these politicians, right? There's also the question of how the ministries are structured. You have bodies that fall directly under the monitoring of the ministries, and you have other bodies like state corporations, statutory corporations, which fall under the ministries, but they are run by boards, right? The permanent secretary, right, under the Financial Services and Auditing Act, the financial secretary, the permanent secretary has no right, has no duty, or these bodies don't report to the permanent secretary. So what you find is a splitting, right? A splitting of how things are organized and how the financial accountability can be achieved. You have the permanent secretary who is responsible for, is the chief accounting officer inside of these ministries, but there are entities in these ministries which he has no control over, right? They are not required to give him a report, and he has no authority to ask them for a report. So the manner in which these accounting practices are accomplished, they are so diverse some of the times that you don't know until the Auditor General point out something. We only know after the fact. The accountability mechanism that should be there on a day-to-day basis, it is non-existent. And that is what is lacking in the ministries. Instead of we finding out when the horse gone through the gate, there should be a mechanism in the ministries on a day-to-day basis, right? Wherein either the permanent secretary or some other financial officer with wider powers that can even monitor these state bodies that are independent of the who operate independently of the ministries can give account for, right? So a lot of
But
it has to do with,
what you're arguing, it point to reform.
of
No, no,
course,
no, no, no,
Reform,
no, no.
reform. Just let me finish, bro. What you're arguing, what you're this talking about, points to reform and modernization. The need for that. So my question to you: of $1 trillion, how much? What percentage you think? You know, you can say, okay, this amount for corruption, this
we would
amount.
know.
No, no, no.
We can know, Mikey. What is clear,
Give me a guess.
Mikey? I can't answer that because inside of these ministries, there is negligence on the part of
Yeah,
the permanent secretaries,
yeah.
right? There is corruption on the part of some of these permanent secretaries. There is negligence and corruption on the part of ministers, right? And it is very difficult for us on the outside to say this amount is due to this and this amount to that. We can only look at some of the problems and identify some of the problems and why these accountability and transparency is not showing up in these places. But it's hard. And on your point, of course, there's some need for reform. There's some need for reform, but there's also need for people in these ministries to do their jobs. There's a need for the permanent secretary to stick out to doing their job, asking questions, right? So that when the Auditor General need to be reported to, they have the answers to give to the Auditor General. Because it's clear that there's a breakdown in the reporting mechanism that is happening inside of the ministries.
Okay. Any other
The,
feedback? Patrick, you want to say something?
yeah, the thing about it is this, right? Like I said, we can talk about corruption till the cows come home, but that's not getting us any clearer about what the real crux of the problem is. Right? The crux of the problem is simply, right, that accountability means that everybody who is there to do their job does their job in accordance with the principles laid out by which they should be doing their job. Right? If a civil servant goes in to do his job, right, and knows what his job is, if he fails to do his job, then that's a lack of accountability on his part. Right? That is basically what it means. Because in terms of how the records are kept, whether they are kept, in file cabinets or whether it is kept electronically, right? It's really neither here nor there. It means that the records are there, right? And it means that the records are accessible. That's what it means. If it's a case where there's a complete breakdown, right, of accountability, it means that there is no reporting that's taking place that should be taking place, right? There's no auditing that's taking place that needs to be taking place, right? It means that there's nobody doing their job in accordance with the principles by which they should be doing their job. It's that simple.
Okay.
Because when that is happening,
So the auditor
then it
general,
means that
so the auditor general share part of the blame there.
the blame is
The
spread.
person
There's
who's
enough
making
blame
the
to go
report.
around. There's enough blame to go around.
Okay.
Can
Okay.
I make a point?
Okay.
You ask a very good question
Go ahead.
about the word inefficiency captures that aspect of the civil service and the bureaucracy, which may include inefficiency because one ministry has no interface with the next, which may include a level of technology that is being utilized. In the project that I was involved in.
Well, I get a kind of feedback, some kind of static.
Oh yes, on my thing.
I don't know whose mic it is.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that
It's gone.
in the project that I was involved in, part of the challenge to improve efficiency is the need for reform. It's difficult without any study to determine what percent of inefficiency or of the costs, the loss to the production. Just like the private sector, if you have an inefficient production system, you will be losing money. In the public sector, one of the biggest inefficiencies is the fact that one department does not necessarily talk to the next electronically. They may talk on the phone, but they don't have adequate systems to translate the loss. If you go to Singapore, I always recall that in Singapore, there might be a very efficient process of relationship. And it's easy for the Jamaican government, if they're interested in improving this area, to identify countries that came out of the same historical experience as we did and utilize the experience of those countries. Singapore is one that come to mind. All I'm saying is that ultimately we could talk from now until next year without stopping about this problem. And what I'm recommending really is that we identify in the manifesto, the measures that are key to anybody, an ordinary person. The way I like how I don't know if it was Patrick who said something about the language he used about where is my notes? What does accountability look like? What does integrity look like? I believe that we have enough talent in the group to put this down on paper and to have a system that is not only written down, but how do the people, of course, the main measure is where there are cases of outright corruption, which can be proven, of course, that you have the option of removing that minister. And inside of the civil service, there must be a way in which you can remove someone who is thieving the money of the people's money. So in other words, there has to be not just the measure, but how to get people to abide by the measure. If there is no consequence to corruption, the people will thief. A man will thief. If there's no accountability, it's always hidden. There's no accountability. It has no consequence. I won't lose my job. If I even find out, there's no system in legislation that speaks to what are the consequences of me thieving money, whether it's termination, whether it's prison,
John,
or loss of power.
John,
Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you talking about consequences, right? My concern is that too much over the years has been paid to that very point, the consequence. What we and these government bodies need to focus on is the day-to-day mechanisms to prevent these things from happening. In a ministry, if a minister brings some procurement document to a permanent secretary, what is the procedure that this permanent secretary has to go through before signing off on that procurement document or whatever? That will prevent the corruption.
All of this under the umbrella is not just consequence alone.
But if I can just say this, real quick. A lot of times when people think of accountability, they think in terms of money. And that's not what accountability is. Accountability is not about money. Money is simply a measure. And this is what I think that people don't seem to get, right? When you're looking at the government and its operation, the government and its operations is no different from a corporation and its operations. It's no different from a family and the management of their economic situation. We're just talking about levels. That's basically what we're talking about. We're talking about at the family level, at the company level, or at the government level, right? And in terms of the levels, it's just the scale at which it is done. If you're looking at stealing of money, the way in which business is done, money don't just get stolen like that. Because that is where you have a paper trail, right? Because that is what establishes evidence, right? It is a paper trail. It is the record right? So whether it is a paper trail in terms of paper trail electronically or paper trail in terms of actual paper document, right? It still comes down to the security of how it is stored, right? And the efficiency of its storage. Because the whole point about it is that accountability means that you can account for all transactions. Even if it come down to a phone call between the prime minister and another minister, right? That is a situation, a record, right? These things are recorded electronically, right? So there's always electronic recording as well as paper recording, right? Because this is how you trace everything. This is how the accountability works. Everything links up, right? The money is not there sitting around. The money is in a bank, so it requires transaction for it to go from the bank to wherever it goes, right? Or for it to come to the bank. So everything is record.
Patrick, I think everyone on the panel understand that. You see, so
No, but you raise the
let,
whole point about paper
no,
and so on, and then
no, yeah,
we
yeah,
get into the whole thing
no,
of recording and all of that.
yeah. But before we go any further, can we? I want to invite Maxine and Herb Nelson to the discussion. Welcome, brother and sister. Maxine, we are talking about the thing that you posted around the $1 trillion. Remember that thing you posted?
Yes, the
The,
article.
yes, that's what we're talking about, and we've been looking at it from various angles. I really think that it is very easy in this atmosphere that we are in right now. It is very easy for us to claim corruption, claim this without looking at the other side, which the bureaucracy itself or the bureaucracy is, and how dated the bureaucracy is. And in terms of the assessment of this $1 trillion, that should also factor into the discussion. What do you think?
Yes, I not think I know that the Jamaica economy at one point the informal economy was either equal to or more than the formal economy. Um, that's a bad situation to be in, to understand how much um, funds are in the system, the daily system that's unaccounted for, and why, as a society, we're like that. I'm in the courts a lot in the music industry, in the estate issues, and I understand personally the setting up of companies at the company's office, and persons um, who think they have companies, and but there's no asset. The company isn't a company. It's like a shell, but they would never know that until they pass and try to leave something for their heirs or partners to understand that they've been operating for decades as a shell. So I imagine, it suits certain people running Jamaica as a society, or it benefits certain people to have this kind of system. I was in the, I'm a member of the Rastafari community, and I saw what happened when, in terms of intellectual property rights, we said, okay, let us set up a trust fund. Community isn't benefiting, um, and we have to set up this structure in order to benefit. I saw everybody run within the community for the hills because no one wanted to be accountable. I say, oh, it's Babylon society, Babylon this, Babylon that. And so I and what is in the rest of our community is in the general community, the general society.
Society.
So I am not I'm just laughing when I read it because I said, well, who is, the annual returns, it seems like you're just spending money and you don't have to file these returns. And these are the same returns when I go into the company's office each year to at least have the shell maintain some legitimacy. And I think it's just the other day, I don't even know how far it is in terms of where the company has to have its assets identified, you know? So on the micro level, it's operating like that. And on the macro level, governance wise, it seems to mirror what is happening overall. And as you were talking, I was wondering about NIDS because I said everybody was afraid of NIDS because it's going to go into, and you're going to observe everything that's moving. And all these banks now in Jamaica, you can't open an account and not indicate what your USA account is. And when you're registering in Jamaica now, you have to show all of your, you know, money trail. So I just think that the corruption is part and parcel having to do with how our economy has been run and has been allowed to run because it's benefiting um, the money class, and we're hopefully.
Vote West. WhatsApp audio.
Yeah, so that's my thought. It is good that it is being exposed, because the article was written in such a matter of fact way, meaning like it I'm saying like $1 trillion. I don't, like who is overseeing this now? What they call it, the Integrity Commission, or I read it and wondered like, so who is observing this? So is because everybody is involved, the Prime Minister office, all these major ministries, etc. And the article didn't give a sense of this being accountable to anyone other than it's just a fact that it's there. But this is how I read it. Like, we have a wild west country. It's trying to be, it seemed to have served the colonial people and certain business people over the years. I think when they changed the terrorism laws, it started to, affect in terms of how money is moved, and it's being watched, the banks, etc. But I'm observing under this corruption watch, what's really going to happen.
Oh, Herb, you're the best man when it comes to the corruption watch.
Uh,
What's your take on the $1 trillion thing?
Look, can you
Is it
can you
just
hear me?
corruption? Yeah.
Yeah,
Eh,
we hear you. We hear you.
Okay. Well, greetings to the panel. Um, I have very little excuse for the past weeks because I've been more in the honeydew club activities than anything else, partially into today's program. I know Maxine can understand that. And look, the audience, as usual, I see some popular people out there, and I welcome their interest as usual. Now, I've been listening to the little part I've heard, and I know that this $1 trillion thing that they want to write off to bureaucracy, there is an explanation, folks. There is an explanation. Let me start with what you were dealing with before: accountability. Transparency and accountability are the two most important principles of good governance, and it enhances the legitimacy of public decision making and service delivery. Right now, when the government is failing in both areas, then you have to ask the question, why? Because transparency enables the public to monitor and evaluate government actions and results, while accountability ensures that the government responds to the public's feedback and demands. So if the public is not seeing anything, you can't make any demands, right? Now, bureaucracy and corruption are complex but interrelated phenomena that affect the quality and legitimacy of public governance, right? There's no simple or definitive answer to whether or not bureaucracy is giving cover to their corruption or contributes to it, right? Bureaucracy can be seen as both a cause and consequence of corruption. On one hand, bureaucracy can create opportunities and incentives for corruption by increasing the discretionary power, information asymmetry, and rent seeking behavior of public officials who control the distribution of value, benefits, and costs. Corruption can undermine the efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability of bureaucracy by eroding the rule of law, the merit system, and the public trust. Bureaucracy can also be seen as a solution and a problem for corruption. On one hand, bureaucracy can prevent and control corruption by establishing clear rules, procedures, and standards that limit the scope for arbitrary and illegal actions by public officials. Bureaucracy can also hinder the fight against corruption by creating red tape, delays, and costs that frustrate the delivery of public service and the enforcement of anti-corruption laws, which we have seen with them bogging down the Integrity Commission to have to come to hearings about the work they've been doing, the effective work they were doing, calling them out and saying you're being political by saying that the prime minister was giving away contracts to his best friend for over a 20-year period, and then by saying, "Oh, we can't prosecute because it's so long ago."
But Herb, what we are saying is that inefficient bureaucracy can also be a contributing factor to this high cost, trillions of dollars. That
No,
is what.
hang on a second, then, Mikey. Look at what you're saying. The permanent secretaries, right? The permanent secretaries have a job, and the permanent secretary job was simply 4 months after the close of the year was to come up with the balance sheet for the ministry and saying whether or not they achieved their goals, the financial goals, and whether or not there was any overspending and who was responsible for it. Are you telling me for 10 years the permanent secretaries, they're called permanent secretaries because they're there, whether it's GLP or PNP or whatever P, and they couldn't keep track of the spending? They should be fired
That's
because
at the,
yeah.
that's at the heart of the matter where you're talking about, Herb. And this is again, this is what I think you're misunderstanding, Mikey. Is that Herb spelled it out quite clearly, right? Except that Herb put it in very intellectual terms, right? And now I break it down in a day, everyday way that the regular listener can understand.
All right,
right?
you're gonna do that.
And that is precisely why I went the route that I went earlier on, right? None of what you're seeing here is new. Everything what you're seeing here predates us. This is something coming out of the very colonialism we were in, right? In economies like ours, right? What happens is that it's what they call a dual economy. You have a black market. It's like you can use the simple terms, a black market and a legitimate market. The government that you see is like the legitimate market. The corruption side is the black market side, right? And where accountability comes in is to preserve the integrity of the legitimate side. And that is why you have recordings and paper trails and all of these things, right? And that's what accountability really is, right? It is saying that if you're a permanent, like Herb said, if you're a permanent secretary, you're in charge of the ministry. You're the one really in charge of the ministry's running operation, right? The minister is a political appointee, right? Different job completely. It means only there to preserve or look out for the political interest of the particular government. But the permanent secretary, him is the one who is there for safeguard the accounting system and the integrity of the job that he has been appointed to do.
Or she.
Or she.
Well, I'm saying
Mikey.
just something, Bridget. We are discussing this topic 1 hour and 6 minutes now. So I know we want to continue, but
Yeah.
there are other topic we want to get to
Yeah,
today.
just one point, Mikey. As I try to point out, one of the problems we face with the accountability, with corruption, is that we're always talking about the things after the fact. After the corruption happened, the Auditor General report, Integrity Commission, all that stuff. What I think we need to demand, right, has to do with part of the bureaucracy that Herb speaks about, is that there needs to be some structure in place in these ministries that them that create an accountability framework on a day-to-day basis, right? So that a permanent secretary can ask questions, sign off on documents, demand answers from ministers, be able to prepare a report for the Auditor General and so on. So that we don't only hear about corruption
After it happened.
after it happened. That is a big concern that we face in this country. That we always have to be discussing the Auditor General's report. We always have to be discussing
I get your
the
point, you know. I get your point.
Integrity Commission's report. But this corruption and lack of accountability has been taking place for decades.
Okay.
And still there is no bureaucracy that
Right.
Herb talks about. There's no organization, there's no structure in place that when something happens, we can go back to the structure and say, this person is responsible for this part of the structure, right? And bring that individual to book, right? If without a structure, we can only be discussing these reports after the fact. We need to have in place these structures and persons responsible for these aspects of these structures, that when there's a specific breakdown, we can go to this individual and say, what happened here? Right now with this report, in this report, there's nothing in there that says John Tom or Harry or ex-permanent secretary or ex-minister was responsible for not accounting for $100 in that trillion dollar report.
Point taken. Rattigan, you want to say something?
Let me start by saying that there are structures in place, and that's why the auditor general can say that they didn't report in a timely fashion. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. We can argue whether or not we should have more requirements in place, but there are requirements, and that the requirements they form the violation. So the auditor general is saying that certain things weren't done on time. Why? How does she know that? Because there are things in place to say that you should file on time, right? That's
Checks
the
and
first.
balances.
Second thing is there is a word I want to introduce. Oh, by the way, forgive my manners. Good evening to the panel and good evening to your audience. I don't know how it slipped me. I'm thinking about the Ravens games. That's why it's being played now. But let me introduce you to a word. I mentioned it on my program yesterday. It's called kakistocracy. And don't get uptight about the word. People got uptight about pussyfooting. Well, there's one called kakistocracy, KAKISTOCRACY. And what it simply means is that when you take
John?
That's when you take people
I know what
who
it means, man.
Okay.
people who are unqualified.
You
and
you
have
see
them
where
run-
you carried?
when you have unqualified people, least qualified people running the government, right? And let me give you an example. The primary purpose of a minister is to set policy. That's it.
Right. True.
Set policy.
True.
The permanent secretary, her job is to ensure, or his job is to ensure that the policy is
It's
implemented and
executed.
to report. That person acts as a courier back and forth between the worker bees and the policy wonks. Now, let me give you an example of how it's failed. And we're talking about how can we implement system. You cannot do it because here's why. These positions are appointed.
Are appointed.
They're appointed. Let me give you an example. In the Ministry of National Security, we have a minister who's a medical doctor, zero experience in law enforcement. We're not even going to talk about the WikiLeaks cable. Put that aside. Let's say he was he was clean as a whistle. He's still a medical doctor with no law enforcement background. Who is his junior minister? Minister of State in the Ministry of National Security, Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, who came over from the Ministry of Health. She's an athlete, no experience in law enforcement. Who's the permanent secretary? Her name is
Now qualification.
Alison Stone Roof. You know who that woman? She came over from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. She was an ambassador. No experience in law enforcement. Go down to the police commissioner. We all know him. No experience in law enforcement. So you have the whole chain of command. People who should oversee one of the most significant ministries in Jamaica. Nobody with any law enforcement experience. That's
qualification.
That's what you call kakistocracy. And that's why we have the things that we have now. Because here's what happened. The minister doesn't know what the hell he's doing. The junior minister, even less. The permanent secretary, she don't know that to go left, right, straight, behind. No. So you know what's happening now? That ministry is going at the full pace. And the road is at T. They get to the T. And they can't make left, can't make right, so they go straight. And that's why we are in the position where we are as far as national security is concerned. So, and you can look throughout the ministries and you'll see that people are put in positions of power and they have no experience. So essentially, it's been run by the technocrats. Now, the technocrats, they come to you and they say, okay, here's a policy, boss. You're reading it, you have no idea what you're reading, so you sign. You sign. How are you going to ask? How are you going to ask pertinent questions? I mean, except for the logical questions. But how are you going to ask deep in the weeds type questions? Because you have no experience. And that's why I keep saying that one of the biggest problems we do have corruption, a lot of it, but we also have inexperience and we have a rudderless ship, and this is what happens.
But if I can,
Can I just answer? I want to make a point to what.
Before you answer,
Patrick,
before you answer that,
Patrick, hold on, Patrick. Let John go. This is like John's second
Yeah,
time.
I believe you have to be careful of one important thing, because I agree with Will in respect to a specific ministry at a current time. That's what he just presented. Ultimately, the responsibility of the people working in the ministry is the government. Ultimately, whichever government elect determine who is appointed. What our thing is not to say that if a government come in and it appoint pure inexperienced people in all the main positions in that ministry, then we are looking at levers to control. So we need in our manifesto to identify experience as one of the things that is critical to the success. But what I understand from Patrick, is not just supervision after the fact, it's operational control. Operational control means that the system is running in real time. When you have an efficient system, you can know in real time how the money is spent, where the money going, and you can set up a system that allow you to change what's happening, to identify bottleneck, to improve the efficiency of the system. What we need to ask for in our manifesto, well, I am always speaking to manifesto, gentlemen and lady, because we need to have a set of principles that speak to the things that we're talking about. We've been exhausting this topic. We cannot go any further. We have to say what are the things to get transparency, what are the things to get accountability, what are the things to get operational efficiency, what are the things to get rid of inexperience. What name? Cockastocracy.
mind you bite your tongue.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know if we can talk this to death. But in other words, my thing is, how do we get everyday working people to go behind those big words? Transparency, accountability. What do they mean in the running of a government? How do I, as an everyday man, exercise control over the system? And the way that we do it is the right to remove them when they're thieving money, and to elect them or to change them when they are efficient. I mean, when it's improved, when the system working, we need to say, how should the system work in terms of this area of transparency and corruption? It's a big topic. The more we're talking about it, we realize everything else is subject to this.
The problem, John. Why should we?
I think
Just the last point. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just did one zero in more and something Will raise, right? Because what Will said in part goes directly to the heart of what the problem is, right? Because as Lasso was pointing out before, in terms of what what needs to take place is the checks and balances. And basically what Will has brought out is that there need to be more focus on the checks and balances, right, in order to prevent a lot of the atrocities that you see taking place. That is really at the crux of the matter. Because, again, like I said, none of what is happening is new, right? Everything that you see happening predates all of us, right? It's just that we are becoming no more aware of this thing. And as we'll say, for several reasons, right? Social media being one of the main ones. And then secondly, the fact that it is happening now at a greater scale than we have ever seen before, right? These are the two main reasons. But the key to it is really in terms of these checks and balances, in terms of bringing people to accountability, right?
And
When
on that note,
the reports don't get to the points that they're supposed to get to in the timely fashion, right? Is anybody held accountable for it? Right?
The
When there
last
are
one,
breaches in the system, is
just a
anybody being
minute,
held
just
accountable for it?
gentlemen, we have to put a stop to this thing now. It's 120 minutes we've been talking about the same topic. Before I go, I must say this. Very interesting that the PMP has not said anything about this, nor has the PMP given a commitment to investigate this and send some of these people to prison. We haven't heard anything from them, but as we go down the road, they might say something. I want to shift the conversation now to this $40 billion roadwork program that Holness planned to start. He announced it, but I'm not sure what's happening because I observed that Holness said this program will be managed by the National Works Agency. That's one part. And the Constituency Development Office in his office will manage another portion of this money. Now, when I heard the news and I started to dig around, only to realize that the person who runs the Constituency Development Office unit in Holness office once served as his private assistant at the Ministry of Education. So is this another sign of corruption coming down the road? Because it's 40 billion. Have you guys saw the news report, right?
No, I didn't see it, but as you talk, I agree. It starts to smell already.
Last you saw that report, Patrick? You saw that report?
No, but I
no,
mean, I don't even need to see it because the thing about it is that
You
what
don't
else
need
can
to
we
see
expect
it.
at this stage? We can't expect anything else at this stage.
I don't know if it's the
Corruption has
same.
been going on, corruption will continue.
Okay. All right. Well,
Does it have to do with the calling of the local
that it
election?
seems that this is a big vote buying exercise because from what I heard is that each MP will be given $150 million.
Is this the same program that was announced last year?
Yeah, sometime in May, the Sparks
Yes,
program.
the Spark program. Okay.
Yeah, but I just see it as a big buyout. Coming.
Well, the fact that it's coming in the window. How many days they have to call the election? 20 days or something like that?
I'm not sure.
No, there's a period of time that they have to give
Notice.
notice.
For local government.
Yes, like they're saying that they're
Okay.
calling it, but they haven't given a date, and then it's like
Okay. Oh,
I think they said they have to do it by the end of
February.
February.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they
Well,
don't have to do anything because apparently they can change that have to at any time. But
okay.
then that would mean that sometime now they would have to make that announcement. So it's interesting that the sparks would fly at this time.
I don't know what's happening. I'm going to try and get Tony Hilton to talk
Mhm.
about that some more. But what I really want to turn to, I want to turn the conversation to is an article in today's Sunday newspaper by Mr. Robertson. I don't know if Will saw that thing, but the Ratigan, you saw that article in this morning in today's paper.
Yeah.
You saw it?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. This man is making or insinuating a lot of things about the works that Mr. Francis and yourself are involved in. Him call it the title of it is tribalism reaches the diaspora. He's calling that you guys are tribalists. What's your reaction? What's your reaction, Radigan?
Well, actually, he didn't mention me. He mentioned Herb and Rupert because they conducted a fact finding mission in
Yeah.
2016, and so I mean I have my own opinions about it, but I'd rather yield to Herb since he was specifically mentioned in the report and he was actually in Jamaica. So Herb, it's yeah.
I,
If
I
he's
don't,
not available, I can give you my thoughts on it.
Well, go
Well,
ahead,
his
man.
light is on.
He probably will be
No,
back.
Herb
He
not.
probably will be
All
back.
right. Here's the thing. I read the article. He didn't describe tribalism, so I'm not going to describe it for him. I don't know what he meant by that, and I'm not going to assume anything. If he used excerpts from Pluto Shervington's song,
Yeah.
saying, you're not leave Jamaica and blah 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 blah. And as far as I'm concerned, it's all nonsense. And a part of me is just saying, ignore the ignorance, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Um, in fact, he made there are several inaccuracies in the story, including the fact that he said the global Jamaica diaspora was established in a different year than when it was actually established. It was established in 2020. Now, they don't. If you look, it's all distraction. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all obfuscation. They don't address the issues. The issues raised were what? Crime, poverty, corruption, standing, failure to deliver service deliveries, and broken promises made to the diaspora regarding representation in the Senate and the ability to vote in Jamaican elections. That's it. He's not this. He's not talking about any of the issues to say, well, yes, there's a good point here, or he's not. And this is typical. When they don't have facts, they start getting personal. But like I've always said, I don't have side mirrors. I don't have a review mirror. I have a windshield. I'm moving forward. I'm busy about trying to get people's visas revoked, get their assets seized, and where possible, have them put in prison. That's my goal. So I don't have time to focus on somebody like him.
there-
Um, Go ahead.
there's a certain consistency in the spokespeople for the government and them sympathizers. When this guy, what's his name, Terry Long from the
Foreign
government
affair.
to Foreign Affairs,
Yeah.
I look when I read this article, it's the same kind of message they're trying to stir up. They're
Yeah.
trying to say that
That's true.
they're trying to say that all of us in the diaspora are what take a certain position are anti-Jamaican. That's a narrative they're trying to spread. That we're anti-Jamaican, we're trying to get people not to help Jamaica or to take their help from there. It's a isolation kind of tactics they're trying. They have no regard for the truth as to what these protests are for. They just feel like they can create a narrative and hope that people will jump on it and see the movement as anti-Jamaican. right? So when I heard Terry Long talk, I heard him talk, and I heard some of them other spokespeople on social media. It is clear that they have no interest in trying to put forward what this whole movement is about. They're just trying to pull it apart, and hope
You
probably
see,
people will start following their arguments.
no, you see what, lads? They cannot defend the indefensible. They cannot. So if you look at Minister Terry Long and the rest of them, they're not addressing the issues. They're looking at personalities and they're digging up all kinds of stuff on people. And that doesn't bother me one bit. As like I've said to them, whatever you found on me, take it to the police. Don't bring it to me. Give it to the police and tell them to lock me up, because that's my focus, trying to lock people up. So, and when you listen to Terry Long, here are some of the things that he says frequently. And I'm so surprised that people allow him to get away with saying these things. He'll say things like, for the first time in 40 years, Jamaica's exports exceed its imports. That's a damn lie. Just go look at Statin. And I put it up on my program yesterday. Imports account for 5+ billion. Exports account for 1.4 billion. Look, he talks about the
Mr. Idiot.
yeah, he talks about and people allow him to get away with this. They don't challenge him. And then he what he does, and watch him carefully, he speaks at a very rapid pace. And he speaks a lot and he repeats himself a lot because he doesn't want to be asked the question. So he says this, and if you're not a trained listener, if you don't have a critical mind, it will sound to you like he's giving you an answer, but he's not giving you an answer. He was asked the other day on Thursday night about whether or not he had signed the code of conduct provided by the Integrity Commission. This was after they received the training. He started talking about roads. It's clear he doesn't want to answer. Well, first of all, he cannot answer the questions. See, bring him before this panel, and he will be revealed to be a charlatan. That's all. It's just a bunch of words, and they have no substance, no meaning, no truth. And even when there is truth, it's skewed. Because, like, for example, when they say, oh, the unemployment rate is 4.6, it's true. I'll give him credit.
Ratigan, I think you've been too kind to him. When you look at this man and listen to him, it's like a robot. A robot, When you listen to him Thursday, you observe, he never looks directly into the camera. He's always looking to the side. Like they have him roll him up and put him out. Continue what you say, my brother.
No, let me just give one quick thing, and then I'll yield to the rest of the panel. Right? They talk about, and you hear it frequently, what is the diaspora doing about stopping weapons from coming into Jamaica? You hear that frequently, right? So they want to deputize us and make us police, men and women. Now, most of the weapons they've seized in Jamaica, I will concede that they say on the side, on the barrel, wherever it says made in the USA. But does that mean that it came directly from the USA? Because we know guns are coming into Jamaica from all over, including Trinidad and Haiti, right? Now, when he said that the diaspora is not doing anything, I'm saying, well, who are they appealing to? Because last December and the December before that, the Prime Minister came, well, in 2022, he came with the police commissioner. Last year, he came with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to talk about national security. And if you remember, 2 Decembers ago, he said he had a list of dons, of people in the United States shipping guns back to Jamaica, and they're going to give them to the FBI and blah, 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 blah. No, keep in mind, there is an organization that they established called the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, and two of them, and Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council. They represent all of us, ostensibly. They represent all of us globally. Ask any one of them, because we all have reps in that body. I ask my rep, you ask your rep, whether or not they've been approached by the government regarding a message concerning weapons being shipped to Jamaica. Just ask them. It's never been discussed. So now they're gonna appeal to me now as an individual and say I must tell them who's shipping guns. Meanwhile, they have an organization representing all of us. They haven't had that discussion with them. So the next thing they should do is provide them with training, deputize them through the Department of State or wherever, give them metal detectors and have them go to the shipping companies and have them go through every single barrel if that's what they want to do. Then these look, what you have here is a bunch of rank amateurs, and they're just, I mean, the guy's a jackass. Just think about it. Listen to him speak. He's a poor representative of Jamaica. And I look forward to the day to asking him some questions. And I'm sure he's not looking forward to that day. But we're going to continue with our message to say, look, these people have no clue, no idea what they're doing. Don't pay attention to them. And the noise that you hear from, especially from the guy who wrote the article today, ignore the noise. Just move forward with the plan. May 10th is the next protest. It's going to be in New York City. We expect people to come out. We expect media to be there. And between now and May 10th, we will be going to Congress. And we're asking the people in Canada to go to their parliament and the people in the UK to do the same thing, because we now have discovered a plethora of laws that could be applied to Jamaica. For one, kleptocracy, stealing from the public coffers. Two, corruption, using your position for personal gain. And three, human rights abuse. And that's our goal. That's our aim. That's our mission.
Herb,
Yes, thanks, Will, for covering. For some reason, my computer just crashed, and I got in on the phone. I was able to listen. Now the computer is back up. So the only thing I have up right now is just the program on the computer. But listen, I said to Dr. Francis, because I'm still a part of the task force. I'm one of the original founders, along with Dr. Francis. And this person, Gordon Robinson, who's writing this article, he's a part of what I call the multi-masses, the naysayers. This is who the government call on to try to counter any message coming out of the diaspora. These people, their job is to create confusion in the diaspora. But there's no confusion on our part. What we're saying is very clear. You have an individual who chairs the diaspora, Global Diaspora Council, and along with two members of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They selected one individual from England, London, to be the other member of a four-person council. Now, when you have a situation like this, and they're dictating to 2 to 3 million people overseas, trying to tell us how we should think, what we should think, and if we think differently and we complain loud enough, then we'll be dismissed from the Global Diaspora Council, right? That's control. You cannot have people in Jamaica saying how we should think and act when they are misbehaving. You need to have a separate and distinct group that addresses that. So when we form the task force, that was the objective. But let me point out, there are several task forces. There's task force for medical, for agriculture, and for other technology and other items. So our anti-crime task force, we look at exactly what Dr. Francis has written about and is looking at. And it's accepted in the diaspora. All the GLP minions, the little toy soldiers, the ones that they wind up and send out to speak or to write an article, is who you're hearing from now. And they fail to address the main conversation that Will is talking about. They cannot address it. because they have to create obfuscation to make it seem like we're confused. But no confusion, people. We're doing and we're saying what needs to be said, what needs to be done. And we have to push back at any further steering of the diaspora by these people until the diaspora can establish other means. The various task force will do the steering for our diaspora. And believe it or not, we do command a bigger audience than they do. They have 28 people in their group. We have a lot more. We have over 60 people in the task force. But we have a lot larger audience that listens to us and will act on our word. And let's see what happens with New York in May. Let's see what happens in June, Caribbean American month, when we have to go to Congress and address congressional leadership, Black Caucus, Caribbean Caucus, Spanish Caucus, right? Let's see
So,
what happens. But
And the State
before,
Department.
and State Department.
so a
Before
question,
that,
a question
Herb,
then, Herb, is
Herb, hold on. Herb, let me ask you a question. The task force, is it still in operation?
oh yes,
Because according to this gentleman, he lists the members of the task force, and then he said, "Are they still members?"
No,
He-
no, Mikey, what he should be asking is the task force still alive? That's what he should be
yeah,
asking.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah,
that's the question. We don't care
yeah,
about the members because the mission it transcends membership.
yeah,
So when he's asking, are these people still the members? That's a foolish question. But before Herb answer that question, it's important that I get this point out to everyone
yeah,
who's listening. They have something. They established this in January of 2020. They took over from the advisory diaspora advisory council, and the Jamaican government decided in January 2020 that they are going to set up this organization called the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council and the Youth Council. Right now, they have something called a terms of reference. Oh, and by the way, they're not registered. They're not registered anywhere, but they have a terms of reference. They have organizational structure. They have disciplinary provisions. They have voting provisions. They have all of this. They're not registered anywhere. You know what that makes them? It makes the people who live in America, part of this organization, agents of a foreign power, and as such, they're required to file under the Foreign Agents Registration Act with the Department of Justice, which they have not done. Just Thursday, a member of the diaspora sat down with the FARA unit out of Washington, D.C., and a person filed a complaint. He was called in and he went in and he essentially spilled the beans, saying, yeah, this is what these people are doing. Now, let me just give you a few references and you'll understand where we're coming from. Part A, Section 1, Subsection 5, it says, it is important to note that the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council is not an arm of the government of Jamaica. Consequently, the views expressed by council members do not represent the views of the government of Jamaica. So they're saying that we set up this organization, but it has nothing to do with Jamaica. Fair enough. Keep that in mind. Now, listen to this. Section 3, it says, the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council will be led and supported by 4 individuals. Who are these 4 individuals? First, the chair will be the minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade responsible for diaspora affairs. That Minister Terry Long. You believe that? You have your
that has
organization, your
nothing to do with
diaspora
the government.
organization is being led by a government minister.
That
Second
has
person,
nothing to do with the government.
right, and it has nothing to do with the government. Second person is a vice chair appointed from the diaspora. That's our rep, right? Third, the undersecretary for diaspora affairs. That's a government official. And the fourth, director of diaspora affairs, and the director of the diaspora affairs department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. So we have 4 people, and of the 4 in our organization leading it, 3 of them are government officials.
But not
Further,
affiliated.
it says, and then they list all the things that they expect you to do right? You meaning the diaspora. Then here's another one. You must support the promotion of events being hosted by the mission as may be relevant to the communities within the region in which they are elected. Listen to this. 14 members are appointed by the minister. This is when they had 28. Now they have 30. 14, half. And by the way, in 2020, they had 28 members. Of the 28 members, 20 were appointed by the government of Jamaica.
Wow.
Think of, let that sink in. It's your organization. It's been led by somebody else. And they're picking the people that they want to lead your organization. And after that, they said, okay, when they had 28 members, they said, okay, you can elect 14, but we're going to elect 14, and we're still going to lead your organization, by the way. Then there's another section here, section 11, termination. The chair may terminate the appointment of a global diaspora council member. The chair.
The minister.
The minister. So
Yeah.
tell me, and I could go on and on through this document and through their national policy. But tell me now, how can they say, oh, and by the way, they have a biannual meeting. Every 2 years, that meeting is held where? Not where we live in the diaspora. It's held in Jamaica. And to add insult to injury, you have to pay a fee to attend those meetings.
What is that fee for?
They call it I think it's registration fee. You have to pay a registration fee to attend your organization that is having a party, and the party is being held somewhere else, not where you live.
But who are the members of this organization?
Who are the members?
Mm-hmm.
The diaspora committee members.
Patrick, you're a member. You're a member is a lady.
That's what I want to come to. That's what I really want to come to.
Yeah, you're a member.
Really what I want to come to.
Your member is my member, is Herb's member.
Yeah.
Her name is Michelle Tolo Neal. That's our member.
Right.
And regarding the letter that was sent, well, you know what? I don't want to expose anything more than that. But just suffice it to say that we intend to get to the point where this organization is abolished. We believe that a diaspora organization should be a standalone organization composed of diaspora members, and we will interface with the Jamaican government. We can't have our organization and it's being led by and it's being directed by the Jamaican government. They tell you when they're going to have the meetings. They drive the topics. They have the meetings in Jamaica. You have to pay a registration fee, and it would make more sense for them to just rotate it to say, okay, the 3 population centers for Jamaica, UK, US, and Canada. So what we'll do is every 2 years, we'll rotate it, and we'll put Jamaica in there as well. So we have 4 locations that we rotate every 2 years. That's what should be done, and then it should be a standalone. So I have no use. In fact, I'm calling upon all of the people who are planning to go to this conference in June in Jamaica not to go. And I'm also calling upon the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council and Youth Council members to resign. In good conscience, you have to resign. You can't sit there and say, well, I'm representing. And by the way, one last point, Nita. There are approximately 800,000 people, Jamaicans, living in the UK. In that election, which was early last year, 100, and I think it was like less than 170 people out of 800,000, less than 170 voted. In fact, there's one representative out of the UK who received 17 votes, and they claim to represent 800,000. In our region where Patrick, Herb, and I live, the Northeast, we have over 1 million people living from Maine to Virginia. More than 1 million people. You know how many people voted in that election? Less than 100. And I can tell you for the Northeast why a lot of people didn't vote. Because the government exerted its control over the organization in 2020, and it pissed off a lot of people, and people just washed their hands. So how can they claim to represent us? Who are they? I'm calling on the members again, resign. And I'm calling on people planning to go to this conference in June, Do not go. And by the way, the minister, the junior minister, Minister Terry Long, he says he'll be here in April. He's going to be doing a 5-city tour. I will be on that tour with him. I will be on that tour with him. And we shall see how we fare when he's asked the tough questions. Because when they can stop you from asking the questions on a town hall meeting, it's going to be difficult for them to ask you. I mean, an internet town hall meeting, it's difficult for them to stop you when it's open forum and you're there in person. Thank you very much, sir.
Maxine,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm just curious though, because being in the diaspora, it's not the government that sent us out, meaning it's a process of trying to survive. The majority of people we're recorded as one of the highest brain drain countries in the world in terms of the percentage of our trained people who have to go abroad, you know, to manifest their achievements. So if the government wants to have a diaspora committee to communicate with the diaspora, I don't see how the diaspora, like, why wouldn't the diaspora be an independent entity? I'm just confused a while ago, to say like, but okay, the government can set up their committee recognizing that the diaspora is a area that they must, focus on. But I don't see where the diaspora has to even have anybody related to the government. You know what I mean? Like, I was just confused for a minute. Like, what is the issue here? The
Control.
Control.
No,
Control.
but how could they exercise control from Jamaica? Meaning to say, they didn't send you here. You're not under any contract with them that you're
I,
supposed to do something out
I,
there.
I I think
I,
I
That,
think
I
I
Huh?
can
think
tell you
what
what
Please.
they'll do. That they'll
I,
fight.
that's
Huh?
not the way they're seeking
They, they'll
control.
fight.
No, but why are they even seeking?
The,
What I'm saying,
Maxine, it's called arrogance.
huh?
It's called arrogance.
No, I'm saying I'm
They're
talking about the
arrogant.
diaspora. I'm not talking about the government. No, I'm curious
Yeah.
about the diaspora because all the time, being a member of the diaspora, I'm aware of the diaspora putting together their independent organizations or efforts to contribute to their homeland in all kind of ways and means. So I'm confused a little bit how the government, other than setting up their committee to speak to all these independent diaspora entities,
They see themselves both as government and diaspora.
when did
And
they start to do
they
that?
they talk they are government and they
No, I'm
talking to
saying when
government
did
and all it.
when did they develop this? Because I've never,
It's a good question, Maxine.
no, over the history of my being in the diaspora and studying the diaspora from from Marcus Garvey time and before Claude McKay, all of these people. I've never yet seen anything about a government trying to be the diaspora.
This is a
let,
government
let,
who
let, let me
is
say something here. Maxine,
Uh-huh.
have you heard of any prime minister asking his fellow cabinet minister to sign a letter before they swear in office? You have never heard of that, right?
That's something to do with the diaspora.
No, I'm no. What I'm saying is that the JLP is one of the most undemocratic organization in Jamaica. It's not no. They are like this from from donkey. The donkey was a boy. So all of what you see is just undemocratic practices to control people. That's what they want to do.
But how do they emerge with this idea? They can have an idea, but the diaspora that has been in existence for almost whatever years and set up the government of Jamaica. You understand?
They,
Because my understanding is that it was the Jamaica Progressive Leave and Concerned Citizens, as how I would be looking at Mr. Rattigan and his team, I say, oh, this is another manifestation that continues over the history of our, traveling abroad and having to enter, deal with home or, this whole dynamic. But the diaspora has always been an independent actor. And in fact,
Maxine, I think what is happening, it's difficult to answer your question. We
oh,
can only offer, some ideas. But it is clear that the government at this time is very anxious about whatever message and whatever image that the outside world has of the government. And one of the ways they think they can control the image that the outside world has is to keep the diaspora under their wings, so that whatever message that is coming out of the diaspora, it is equal to the message that the government wants and the image the government wants to portray to the outside world. Right now, it is clear that they don't trust the diaspora because they think the diaspora can make things happen that many Jamaicans on the soil cannot make happen. Right? They are nervous about losing them visas. Them nervous about the diaspora knowing about their drug connections and their corruptions and all of these things. So I think that is why they love a diaspora that is under their wings right now.
Let me answer Maxine's question. She asked the question, when did this come about? It came about in January of 2020. That's when
oh,
they established this. And they did it under much controversy, especially in the New York area. There was a lot of controversy back and forth about why are they taking over the organization. And I remember that they dispatched the rep at the time, Akeelia Maitland. They dispatched her with no fanfare. It was nasty, and they got rid of her. And then they established this thing. Now, somebody just put in the chat. They said if the diaspora have their own organization, this government may choose not to engage with them. I beg to differ, because there is the big R, remittances. And
remittance.
when
That's
you,
what I'm
yeah,
saying. It's your
But
power.
another point to your point, Will, right? It goes back beyond 2020, I would say, because here's what happened. As Maxine mentioned, remember the Jamaica Progressive League and all of that, right? One of the things about it is that you got to understand the position of the Jamaican government has been largely opportunistic, right? Back in the days of the Jamaica Progressive League, it was more a situation where it was mostly under the PNP regime that they were active, right? And then they were kind of labeled, right, to be more
Yeah.
of a PNP organization, right?
And that is
And
what they're
that and
trying to
that
do
is in
now.
part why you see the GLP did what they did in like 2020 in an effort now to build something, right, with the kind of image, right, in the diaspora, right, that the Jamaica Progressive League might have had, right, but with their stamp, right, and hence that's why they did it the way they did it. That was their way of doing that, right? I think that's my whole take on it.
yeah. But the thing is, it 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 begs the question: what power do we have, and when do we exert our power? Because they know we're fractured, and we've been fractured from time immemorial. It's never been a homogeneous diaspora. People have different political views, different social views. So we've never been one people, right? We've been a collection of peoples, and what they're doing is they're thriving off of that right now.
And a deep story to that too. There's a deep story to that too. The closest we have come to that, right? How the whole concept of diaspora came about. Really came about out of the Govt movement, That's really where it came from, right? Because Govt and his success in building the UNIA, right, was to unite black people across the world, right? Garvey was Jamaican and all of that, right? Which is why it was such a big issue when they deported Garvey from the US, right? And after they deported Garvey from the US, it never the UNIA did not completely crumble. Because even to this day, you still have pockets of the UNIA that still operate
Yeah.
here, even here in
Mhm.
Philadelphia, right? So the whole thing about it is that you always have to look at the history, right, to really get the answers, because that's where all the answers are, right? It really came out of the Garvey movement to build a diaspora, and Jamaica again played a prominent role because, of course, Garvey was Jamaican, right? There are other Jamaicans too, prominent Jamaicans, who people don't know as much as they know Garvey, but there
God
have been
McKay.
several Jamaicans, right? Even trade unionists from here who get deported back to Jamaica, right? Who played prominent roles. That's how the whole diaspora idea came about.
But
John,
one quick second. We just said megawatt. Yeah, I saw her yesterday in the chat. It's a very simple concept. Very simple concept. That you have an organization. It's your organization, and therefore you should run that organization. You shouldn't have outside people come in and dictate to you. And then not only do they dictate to you, they select half of your membership. I mean, they lead it and they select half of the people and they have all the power. And then they tell you in their terms of reference what they require of you. But then you say, but it's our organization, it represents us. I say, that's poppycock. That's hogwash. That's not true. And I hope people just look at it in simple terms. We don't have to get bogged down in the terms of reference and all of those documents. Just look at it in simple terms, saying if it's my organization, it's my organization. I'm going to lead it. I'm going to run it. I will interface with them, and then that's it. But in terms of saying no, we have an organization, but let them come in, let them direct it, let them pick members, nonsense.
Now, folks, let me just give a quick input. After Garvey movement, and then you had the Progressive League supported by the PNP in New York, the Labour Party came and supported a new league called the Freedom League. I don't know if you guys remember that.
I'm hearing feedbacks on some phone. Somebody,
Okay,
yeah,
but if everybody
go ahead.
can mute, that would be good. But the bottom line is the Freedom League came about, and then before you know it, we had
Just a minute, Herb. We're still hearing that sound. Can you guys mute your mic?
okay. So we're good. You still
Yeah, go
hearing
ahead.
it, Mike?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So right after that, when I returned from Germany, I was in the military. I came back in 1996. It was still the Progressive League going up in New York along with the Freedom League. And then all of a sudden we have now graduated to a regional program that I understand the PNP established, which is the precursor to what we see coming out of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They seized on the opportunity that we were fractured and that they could, in fact, steal control and regulate the message, regulate the communication that's coming out of the diaspora. Not just in the US.
Hold on, Herb. I'm still getting that feedback.
Okay.
Can some mute?
Okay, everybody's muted, Mike. You still hearing it?
Yep.
No. Okay. As far as I can tell, what seems to be happening is that these folks have learned very well the art of marketing and regulating their messages in the diaspora. They don't want a counter argument. They do not want us to reveal anything untoward that they're doing. They're stealing the brand Jamaica and they're saying, oh, we are protecting it. But in fact, over the past 8 years, they have milked it for all it's worth. And so now that we are pointing out the corruption that is happening, we're pointing out exactly what the diaspora needs to be aware of. And that is none of the programs that they're supporting on the island have survived because of a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability. And the fact that the programs are asking for money each time. And each time we talk to the government is asking us to send money. So we realize that this is just a straight money transaction that the government is seeking. And the proof is when COVID was here and 450,000 US dollars was collected in the Northeast, it was sent down around 2020, 2021. The lady who led the Northeast before this current diaspora group came into being has been requesting accountability from the government to say where the money has gone to. And she cannot get, she's filled out ATIs and other requests for 2 years. And she cannot get an explanation of where the diaspora's 450,000 US dollars went to. But look beyond that. Look at the almost $3 billion that we're saying needs to be accounted for. From 2016, when the Inter-American Development Bank gave them a huge grant for youth, all the way to the vice president giving $30+ million and 10 million prior to that, and the foreign minister from the UK giving over 40 million Jamaican dollars over the last year. None of it was ever been posted in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or anywhere else, Ministry of Finance or PIOJ, when Mr. Rattigan requested the information for accountability purposes. None of it is posted showing what the plan or the projects are and how those projects are funded. So the bottom line is the government has failed in its accounting for diaspora funds. They don't want that to come out. They don't want to be hammered on that. And this has led to the Jamaica Diaspora Anti-Crime Task Force, as well as the Institute of Caribbean Studies Crime and Security Committee, establishing the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation. And we're trying to go further than that right now. If we're successful, we'll have a mirror that mirrors everything with these funds that go down to Jamaica. We can deep dive those funds and see exactly where they're spending their money. But for now, we have to depend on donations to trickle in so that we can do the respective deep dives on the ministers we suspect are illicitly padding their bank accounts and their pockets with diaspora funds. So if they want to control the messaging, if they want to control investigations, if they want to do all of these things, it's not going to work because we now have a capability beyond their ability to control.
Well,
Yeah, you
Go,
don't
go,
call on me yet. What?
go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I would like to suggest that we add a section in the manifesto. I'm sorry that I am always focused on that, because we could talk till we eye blue about how the diaspora should run. What I'm suggesting is that what everybody is saying, the voice of the diaspora must represent the diaspora. Why don't we add a section in the manifesto that we're talking about, which speak to how the diaspora should run? It's clear that it cannot be an arm of the government. Full stop. That's my contribution.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, we can suggest, but the irony of the situation is there are so many associations out there, and even within the associations in all, let's say at least half of these states in the U.S., 25 states, because we know that half the states respond to Caribbean American Month, and they have various organizations from the Caribbean, the Jamaican organizations being the most numerous of all. And within those organizations, as small as they may be, you do have JLP and PNP voices. But we have managed to tell them to check your party at the door and come together as the diaspora. And that's the central message we need to craft within the manifesto, that we are the diaspora. We are the only ones that can keep our local government and our national government honest.
So Herbie,
Yeah.
you're the man that can put down 2 or 3 points, because I just listen to you guys talk. It needs to be representative. We only can speak on behalf of Jamaican diaspora.
Well,
how it should run. It's regional elections,
yeah,
accountability. Those 3 things must be inside of something that, regardless of which government in power, this is how the diaspora should run.
Yeah. Okay. I owe you an official copy of the organization that the nonprofit that I formed, because we want to use that vehicle, change the name, and tweak the articles within it to whatever you have. And then what I sent out was some other basic stuff that I had in that paper, that we were going to try to account for the entertainers and the sports figures. Once they get old, what happened to them? They suffer in silence, and then they pass away, and nobody hears anything else.
Confusion.
Confusion.
Herbie, me only talk about diaspora. So we agree that we should add a section. I mean, between you and Will, who don't have enough experience, I used to belong to it in South Florida. But we're clear on how is an efficient diaspora run. Maxine, is the diaspora is the voice of the diaspora. How do we ensure that that is how it stays? That's all I'm saying.
There's a way to do that.
Yeah, well, we're not going to solve it here. There is a way to do it. Just like all the other things.
You know, the vision and the mission, the entire purpose has to be there. And
No. I am not saying that this document is the diaspora document. This document is the People's Manifesto. And the People's Manifesto include a section on the diaspora because an important thing. 11. How much diaspora we have? 1.2 million in the US. 1 point so much. I was looking at the numbers. It's a big group.
But
Kingston
John,
21 plus.
John, you still have to spell out what vision or what mission you hope to accomplish.
No.
I think that
Yes.
go ahead.
But this is not the document I'm referring to. Is not something specific to the diaspora.
I think I understand you, John, and I'm not sure Herb quite get what you're saying. You're
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
you're saying that for us we need a discussion, right, around the diaspora included in our discussion of the People's Manifesto, right? But it's not
Yeah.
one that is going to spell out the details of the operation and how it will function and all of that. But just to have a general
a statement
picture,
of
right?
principles.
Yeah, but hold
about,
on. Before
yeah.
before you even get to the statement of principle, God, that is where Herb now is mentioning about a vision, right? So basically, what Herb is saying is that in our discussing it, we going to need to come up to as well to make our contribution, right? To have some idea as to what a vision, right, and a mission for a Jamaican diaspora will look like.
Well, gentlemen,
Herb left, but
Yeah.
just a minute.
Before,
Maxine, go ahead.
yes, pertinent to the diaspora is the Civil War in Texas, where the movement, I'm aware of how many Jamaicans have been trying to get over that border scenario down in the south
Hey,
there, Mexico, etc. And I am looking at the statements coming from the Republican side and the war that is about to or maybe unfolding with the Biden administration, with the National Guard and the federal troops, and the election coming up where the what their threats now that everyone who ever crossed that border um are going to be hunted down and returned to their country. So again, as you were talking a while ago about the manifesto and the diaspora, we are a diaspora for economic reasons, you know, that drive us to leave Jamaica and the Caribbean or Africa seeking work here, and the people here seeking our labor. Because obviously we are allowed to come in on the various negotiations, government to government, so on. So I'm just saying the question of the diaspora, we should speak, have some explanation as to why we are a diaspora and the conditions that we are here under, and why we would have certain feelings towards our homeland in whatever respective, countries, and then look into a future, right? Where this potentially, because the leaving out of Jamaica and going to these metropolitan centers is also a pressure cooker, like a lever to take off the pressure off of the state, right? And they let out X amount of people in order to keep the peace at home. So vision of Jamaica now, where the people are not going to be, if the Republican and the whatever is happening in the world economy, the type of thing I'm reading now in Texas, and the type of threats coming from a Trump administration that may come over to the Democratic based on the pressures that are coming are definitely going to be affecting our communities, you know. So
Well, uh,
I just wanted to insert what is happening in Texas
yeah.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
because
Well,
that is a topic of, you know, import.
well, I must say this that we touch on topics that we can't resolve today or tomorrow. It's gonna take a process. Gonna be long. Gonna be slow, and what have you. What is clear though? What is clear is that Will Rattigan and Mr. Francis, they have stirred the government into making some moves. No guess. We know that as a result of Will and Herb and Mr. Francis, the government is moving. That's what's happening right now. With regards to their aim that they want to control the diaspora and what have you, my only reaction is this. When we were in Jamaica, they could not control us. Now we are in America. I don't see how the hell they can control us. They will find some lackeys and they'll put them into different position. But we are rebels, and nothing is going to stop us from, you know, balling out when we see oppression and
Speak
violence.
for yourself.
No, 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 nothing, bro. Nothing is going to stop us from balling out. No, nothing. We are Jamaicans. You understand me?
We
We are
have
Jamaican.
maroon blood. We have
Yeah,
maroon blood.
yeah, and not now stop it. So for all understand these guys now coming up with all of these design, we know that is just a waste of time. And they can't stop us, you know. So let's not be troubled by them. We have Will Rattigan on our side. You understand? And Herb Nelson. And we know we'll get things done. So brother man, sister Maxine, I want to thank you all for a very
Wait,
interesting discussion.
did you celebrate King Tubby's Earth Strong today? Did you
Oh
acknowledge him?
damn. Well, oh my God. Well, go ahead, Maxine. Go ahead.
Well, King Tubby's today is his, I think he was born 1941.
Yeah,
Um, so today would have been his 83rd Earth
yeah,
Strong,
yep.
and he's being celebrated, you know, across social media for his achievements and the foundation of the Waterhouse music brand, a major foundation, not the only. So we're just acknowledging King Tubby's today, his Earth Strong.
Oh
I just
man.
want to mention that the tape, the video you sent me, Rattigan, is you sent it out, right? With Fat Man.
No, I think Maxine sent that out.
No,
Or maybe
earlier, but he sent
he,
the
the
YouTube,
video.
the actual video. Yeah.
Yeah. Rattigan, you can hear?
Yeah.
So I want to add to what Maxine is saying, because the lesson for me is that Fat Man gives so much praise to
To
Tubbies
Tubbies. Yeah.
that the contribution of them man highly regarded. I would really recommend that video to all of us if you never see it.
No, I can do better than that.
Send it out.
Fat man is a friend of mine. I can bring him on the panel. So just sit and talk with us one Sunday.
Yes, well, not one Sunday, but like how we are celebrate Tubbies. Today is his birthday.
Yeah.
We should invite Fat Man to be on the panel next week or whenever,
Yes.
somewhere that relate to that event.
To King Tubbies.
Yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
so
And
Tubbies is
celebrating.
alive. Is Tubbies alive?
No.
Right, all right. So we can't bring Tubbies. We can bring Fat Man.
No, I'm there,
Right?
I'm there, I'm there. Tommy's there.
I also want to note that 2 days before Toby's birthday was the Earth Strong of my uncle, Sir Clement Coxon
Cox and
Dodd.
Dad.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
we are going to have to maybe make January into our month, different from February being reggae month. I'm not sure. We have several major people in January, so that may be something for the group
Yeah.
to think about how we memorialize the
Our
month.
meaning the Waterhouse community when you use the word our.
Yes, the Waterhouse dancehall sound
Right,
system
right.
energy.
Hey, Mikey, you know who you should bring on? Because last time I play 2 hours of jammies. You should have bring jammies because
Yes,
jammies
yeah,
is
yes,
understudy.
definitely,
Yeah.
Yeah, bring him
definitely,
on.
All right.
definitely.
Well, I'm gonna reach out to him.
Yeah, that would be something. That would be
Yeah.
something.
Jamming.
Yeah.
But remember, Jam is just recovering from heart
Yeah, him have some
surgery.
health issue. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
Prayers up for Jamis. Prayers up.
yeah, prayers up, but him still about, still
Yeah, yeah.
doing him thing. So, sisters, thank you very much. And I said sisters, I should be sistering. So I want to thank
We
you
hope
very
to get
much.
more sisters on apparently. So
Apparently.
I think so. I think so. We should get some. We also want to thank the many guests. Today we had 260 listeners, which is not bad. Okay, so guys,
260 while the show going on.
while the show going on, yeah, which is not bad. And I want, listen, we need to up that number. So I'm asking you to tell a friend, like and share Waterhouse Vibes because it seems like we are the only place where people can come and they get into a conversation without having to quarrel or shout at anyone. Waterhouse Vibes is the only place. We don't raise our voice. We just listen and let everybody finish. All right. So until next week, bro. Sister,
yes,
Blessings,
stay
blessings.
strong, stay strong,
Blessings,
stay strong.
blessings.
Yes,
yes.
I. Yes, I. Cool.